Everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Courtney Gardner, Partner Marketing Coordinator at Proficient, and I'm excited to be moderating today's webinar, FreeForm Apps or Essbase 21c, How Do I Choose? Time permitting, we'll have a Q&A session at the end of the event, so please type your questions into the Q&A tab located to the right of your screen, and feel free to do that at any time. Two questions often come up with our online events. Can I get a copy of the slides and a link to the recording? The answer to both questions is yes. We will email you with information on how to access both the slides and the recording following today's event. To start things off, I'll quickly go through the agenda. First, we'll have an introduction of today's speaker, Kurt Mayer, and then I'll talk a little bit about Proficient and our Oracle practice. We'll then jump into where Essbase is found, your organization's pathway for migration, and whether it makes sense to stay on-prem. Kurt will then discuss what exactly are FreeForm Apps and Essbase 21c and how you can choose between them. Kurt will then go through some different scenarios and we'll transition into the Q&A portion. I'd now like to introduce today's speaker, Kurt Mayer. Kurt is a solution architect within our CPM practice and has over 30 years of experience in analytics and reporting and business intelligence and data integration, with over 18 years of experience in the Oracle EPM and BI space. Proficient is a digital consultancy founded in 1997. We currently have over 35 locations worldwide, and in 2020, we did over $612 million in revenue. What we're most proud of is our 90% business repeat rate. This is a great testament to our customer success and our customer loyalty. Next, we are also global in our delivery. We're dedicated to helping the world's biggest brands connect with customers and grow their business. We have multiple US locations along with Latin America, Europe, China, and India. Now I just want to touch briefly on our Oracle partnership. Our Oracle expertise lies within ERP, SCM, HCM, EPM, and analytics. We work across 6 major industries, and to date, we have deployed more than 3,000 projects. All right, so without further delay, I'd like to hand it over to Kurt now to discuss where Essbase is found. Kurt?
All right, thank you, Courtney. Let's start with that, with where Essbase is found. If you look around the slide here, so start up here in the upper left, talk about Oracle Fusion. The general ledger embeds Oracle Essbase technology. For instance, if you weren't aware of that, they do this to combine traditional general ledger functionality with dimension-based reporting functionality. For instance, at the time the users set up their ledger and complete the accounting configuration, the balances cube is created automatically. You can also find Essbase underlying project analytics and territory management, and it is powering over 3,000 pods on Oracle Public Cloud, the OPC. Essbase can also be found in use within finance and FP&A departments all around the world. It's typically administered and owned by IT, but you often find it run by finance as well. Essbase is a standalone product. Traditionally, we see it as an on-premises deployment in a customer data center, but it's also part of Oracle's EPM software as a service solution, the SaaS solution, where it powers components all throughout EPM's functionality, like financial consolidation, project planning, CapEx planning, workforce planning, headcount, revenue, and expense planning. And you'll find that Essbase is powering over 15,000 EPM pods on Oracle's cloud. Essbase can also be found bundled on premises with Oracle's business intelligence offering, OBIE, as it's called BIFs, or BI Foundation Suite there when you are looking for it. Until recently, Essbase was also sold as part of Oracle Analytics Cloud, or OAC. You may be familiar with that term. BIFs and OAC Essbase were 12c versions with better performance and functionality than the on-premises 11g versions systems of Essbase. The Oracle Fusion General Ledger also embeds Oracle Essbase 12c technology. The common versions found for standalone 11g on-prem would be 11.123 and 11.124. Those are probably the most common that you'll see out there. You may have some of those versions. And where it's commonly found powering on-premises EPM planning applications, over 10,000 customers are running Essbase like this. And now, as a standalone database product again. Version 19c of Essbase has been replaced by Essbase 21c on OCI, or Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, which is a fundamental re-architecture of the conventional public cloud, providing an IaaS, or infrastructure as a service solution for what-if modeling, bespoke planning, analytics and reporting, and they have well over 500 instances now on OPC and growing. By the way, there wasn't an Essbase version 20c because no company ever wants to be associated with the year 2020, so you won't see a version 20c. So as a current Essbase customer, what are your options for migrating forward? Looking at where you are today, if you're currently on Essbase 19 OCI or OAC Essbase with multiple cubes, and you want to stay standalone in the cloud, then Essbase 21c on OCI Marketplace is an option for you. It's also integrates with autonomous data warehouse, which is a nice thing there, and I'll talk more about that a little bit later. If you're currently using Oracle EPM, then FreeForm Apps offers Essbase customers a software as a service option with the EPM Cloud Enterprise SKU, where the use cases for that would be software as a service reporting, planning, archiving, and then also Essbase ADW adoption is also on the cloud EPM roadmap as well. So you'll find this integration with autonomous data warehouse on both of those options. And then if you're currently using Essbase on-prem 11G and you want to stay on premises, then Essbase 21c independent deployment is an option in that case. So let's talk about that third option, speaking to Essbase 21c independent deployments. If you're currently on or upgrading to EPM 11.2, then it might make more sense to deploy Essbase 21c as an independent standalone system. Both on-premises and cloud versions are the same Essbase because it's a single unified Essbase. It's the same code base, so they are identical. You get all the benefits of the latest version of Essbase by doing that, plus integration with directory services, Hyperion shared services. You still have EAS, albeit a light version of it, at least until the JET user interface comes to full parity. With Essbase 21c independent deployment, you can deploy a standalone version. This diagram's attempting to show that. So we have a server here where we're deploying a standalone within its own EPM foundation server using shared services. It's easily managed if some common users are in both EPM foundation instances with Java 1.8, and then leverage the same Oracle database components as 11.2. So the picture on the lower right is showing 11.2 foundation and shared services with Essbase 21c on top, deployed as an independent deployment. So so it's separate from EPM 11.2. On the left, we see the EPM 11.2 planning here, and it's still using Essbase, but it has its own version of Essbase. It's a special version of 11.124, by the way. So on the lower left picture, we see 11.2 EPM Foundation, 11.124 standalone Essbase, and 11.2 planning. But both deployments, the EPM 11.2 and the Essbase 21c standalone, working together and using a common LDAP if that's the security model that you want to go to. The things you need to do that, and we'll talk more about this as well later, basically having Essbase Plus license. If you have that, then you can freely move to Essbase 21c. If you have a BIFS license, then you're also entitled to move to Essbase 21c. And then, of course, if you have the full use Essbase licenses, then that allows you to freely move to 21c. So what if you are Essbase on premises currently and you're considering moving to the cloud, or perhaps you're considering moving from your EPM 11.124 on-premises system to EPM Cloud, and you're not sure what to do with your standalone full-use licensed Essbase cubes? what are my options if I want to move those to the cloud as well? Or perhaps you've just learned that you must migrate your OAC Essbase applications off of OAC at the end of your current OAC contract, because there'll no longer be an option there for you. What are your options then if you find yourself faced with that situation? Well, there are two recommended pathways: Essbase on OCI, and then FreeForm Apps. Those are the two recommended pathways for that. So each have their own benefits to weigh. Considerations as how they meet your requirements. You know, the Essbase on OCI, it's all about control. It keeps you in control. It keeps you in control of the configuration, the customization. You have SSH access. So this lets you perhaps stay consistent with your current on-prem practices by going with Essbase on OCI. It does provide partitioning support, transparent and replicated partitions, and also a very interesting feature is federated partitions to autonomous database, where you can literally have a zero footprint in your cube and have your data in ADW. You have unlimited cubes by going with this scenario here. You can integrate with other native OCI services, OAC in particular. So even if you've moved your OAC Essbase over to Essbase on OCI, you can still communicate back to your OAC, and then of course autonomous data warehouse. In this particular instance, EPM to you is really just another source of data, because most of your data is living outside of EPM. So that would be that might be a reason to go with that. In FreeForm Apps, the data in your standalone Essbase cubes is primarily sourced from EPM, or we're targeting EPM for that data. So you're minimizing data movement, and you're maintaining consistent metadata and a data source by going the FreeForm Apps route. The Essbase cubes in here, then in FreeForm Apps, are generally used as reporting cubes for data from planning and close. And then you also find that your users are predominantly what I call EPM type users. They're more used to planning and reporting. They're not your typical Essbase users. So having FreeForm Apps gets Essbase into the hands of people that are really more comfortable with thinking in terms of planning and reporting. In contrast to OCI, Essbase on the OCI Essbase out of the marketplace, where it's letting you have all the control, then you give up that control by going to FreeForm Apps. But that can be a good thing, because your administration is hands-off. It means you have an end user oriented deployment that gives you the web interface benefits, and you have a different admin interaction that you'll get comfortable with. But you also have a new rules interface and an editor. So there are some features that are beneficial for going to the SaaS type of world. So let's talk about what is FreeForm Apps. First, let's start with the definition of freeform from Webster's. Freeform, an adjective meaning not conforming to the conventional rules of composition or form, spontaneous, unrestrained. And I think this describes the FreeForm Apps rather well. So what is FreeForm Apps? Well, it's available within the Oracle EPM Cloud, the Enterprise Edition. It's still Essbase as a special version of 12c, although Oracle Product Management has told me that EPM Cloud incorporates Essbase 21c in the future. I'm using air quotes and safe harbor. They have no date announced for that as of yet, but I do know it's being looked at. It's in the plans to look at incorporating Essbase 21c. It can be hybrid or ASO cubes. You can have as many FreeForm applications as you want. Currently, one FreeForm app with one cube per pod, but they are releasing a version that has 12 cubes in one app, so you finally get multiple cubes within an app. FreeForm Apps gives you the ability to build open definition models quickly. So there's some simple migration options to go from your existing cubes. If you're migrating things to FreeForm Apps, you can import your Essbase OTLs, your outline files. You can import backup from an on-premises single cube Essbase application. And then you can also build new apps from Excel models using Excel builder that lets you build those apps. So you have all the benefits of SaaS hands-off administration by going that route. You can have some very large-scale models in contrast to what you might be used to if you're an APPCS user or have used the Essbase apps in planning in the past. Here in FreeForm Apps, you can have a large number of custom dimensions, up to 29 total, a large number of members, and there are no requirements as to having specific dimension types. And the best thing, in my opinion, is that by going the FreeForm Apps route, you leverage all the EPM platform features. You can access the FreeForm Apps through the web, through Smart View, and then also there are other features that are available to you, like by staying in the EPM cloud, like data forms, the dashboards and infolets, the business rules, Calc Manager, Groovy, the REST API endpoints are available to you. Navigation flows, approvals and task lists, valid intersections and auditing, planning security, not just the Essbase filters. And EPM Cloud gives you a unified smart view for EPM. So with this smart view and with the enhancements that they've done, you get a multi-grid in-sheet point of view. You can submit without having to do a refresh. It incorporates flex forms, multi-parent zoom in. You can also, on the roadmap is to have the ability of having the member alias in separate columns along with the member name. And then you can leverage the EPM tools like data management to load data, to automate DIM builds, the EPM integration agent to execute SQL queries, and access REST API endpoints, use Jython, use Groovy, and other types of queries for the integration agent. And then automation can be done consistently across the application with EPM Automate to export data, to perform complete calculations and consolidations. So you have an easy way to do automation and to maintain it. And then again, since it's SaaS, you have the benefits of being name user based, hosted and serviced by Oracle. Monthly fixes and patches are handled for you. Nightly backups are done for you. You get frequent enhancements. You're assured you're staying current with the latest versions, and so you have some consistency there. You can have separate test and production environments, that's included, and then multiple instances are included as well. Along with Freeform Planning, Oracle EPM Cloud lets you align enterprise data close with confidence and connect all of your planning together to perform modern day analytics and reporting, and then financially outperform in an intelligent way. So EPM Cloud also comes with these great reporting options, reports, narrative reporting, dashboards, OAC, reports, which has previously been available as management reporting and the narrative reporting business process, is now embedded in the EPM Cloud Platform business processes and applications alongside with, and then eventually replacing financial reporting. These are all reporting off of EPM Cloud options. So like tax or close, profitability, planning, the different features that are available to you in EPM Cloud. So it's probably one of the biggest benefits, the biggest use case for Freeform Apps is you think back to if some of you are on-premise Essbase users and you typically have an ASO reporting cube that's pulling data together from your other cubes, and you use that as a reporting cube. ASO because it's fast, but you can do the same thing here. You could use an ASO Freeform app migrated from an on-premises ASO Essbase cube, and then you could replicate the role that you were doing with Essbase being the reporting for EPM, that just like you did on-premises by sourcing its data from other apps within EPM Cloud, and then rationalizing the metadata across apps, perhaps by unifying the metadata using EDM perhaps. And then what that does is it reduces the stress on other applications from reporting queries, allowing you to leverage the reporting features of EPM Cloud. And this gives you that unified source for in-application and external reporting tools. So this is this is probably one of the best use cases for going to FreeForm Apps, because you want to stay in your EPM Cloud environment. So why would you pick Essbase 21c? Well, the 21c Cloud it's a re-architecture of Essbase for the cloud. It's designed to support higher concurrency and faster recoverability. It eliminates security bottlenecks. There's better memory utilization. There's dynamic scalability. We have encryption at rest. It has enhanced Essbase functionality over 11G and 12C versions. We have new features like data sources, scenario management, cube designer, hybrid mode. The only functional difference between OAC Essbase 12C and 19C was the hardening of the hybrid code. But now we have a much deeper dependency analysis going on, freeing memory constraints that previously would have arisen. So Essbase 21c further hardens and optimizes that even further. The hybrid engine, both the query and calc are integrated with the hybrid engine. So that's the biggest area of improvement in the hybrid, where before it was just handling the query dependencies, but now it also they've extended that to extend the calc that's integrating with the hybrid engine, so it will pick up the dependencies there. So you can use your BSO formulas with upper level sparse dimensions, for instance, and not just for ag any longer. Sandboxing and scenario management equals lightweight scenario management with workflow, if you will. Sandboxing has a built-in approval process, so you could save your cubes in sandboxes for testing and then moving to production later. And then the scenario management allows you to create workflows and control ownership. There have been vast improvements to partitioning and federated partitions combined with the autonomous data warehouse. So Oracle has spent a lot of effort in adding and improving the partitioning, especially the federated partitions. So with the autonomous data warehouse, ADW, and federated partitions, you could have cubes literally with a zero size footprint. So it's an exciting thing to think about on large cubes, and then getting all the advantages and speed of the autonomous data warehouse to combine the best calculation engine around in the industry and combining that with the best performing database. So marrying those two together is just a smart thing to do. So Oracle spent a lot of time and investment on that. And then a lot of development effort has been invested in deepening Smart View integration, adding new features. So also in the area of Excel, there's a design by example Essbase application. It's called DBX, or you might have heard it referred to as Cube Designer as well. But DBX, or design by example, it's a ready to use business model that gets you from Excel to Essbase Cloud in under a minute. And literally just in minutes, you can take this Excel workbook that is describing your entire application, all the dimensionality and everything about that application, and then shove that up to Essbase Cloud, and it creates the app very, very quickly. There's also gallery templates to accelerate your cube build, to let you reuse components of applications. I like gallery templates especially, and these are these are really DBX workbooks that let you go build a little sample test app. I use it to better understand new features, so that whenever the new features come out, there's always gallery templates that are provided to let you examine, explore, and look at those new features. So I use that for that. Essbase 21c has a modern browser-based user interface. It's greatly improved the outline and rules editing. If you've used earlier versions of Essbase Cloud, particularly of OCI Essbase, there's probably been a lot of feedback from you to Oracle about the need for improving that interface with outlining, especially with rule editing. Probably some of you felt like you you took a few steps backward going from EAS and the things that you could do in the outline editor there when you went to say OCI Essbase. A tremendous amount of resources and development has gone into improving that, and in many areas it's actually better in the cloud. And then, as I mentioned, deeper smart view integration in the features. There's dynamic security filters now, which you know sometimes you have thousands. You can input thousands of security filters. So with dynamic security filters, you have a way to reduce those down to literally just dozens of filters by using dynamic security filters. You can find out more about that either from us after the webinar or just Google. There's a lot of great information out there about dynamic security filters. The connections and data sources feature, it gives you a unified source system management. It enables better drill through rules and partition management. The benefit is that it's a centralized source data management right in the platform because it has the built-in multi-cell and recursive drill through. You also have some new clients. For Maxell and CLI, the clients are new because we only want secure connections coming from outside. So hence Maxell is a client, and then it runs HTTPS, as does CLI. So not to make it confusing, that Maxell itself isn't new, it's the client that's new and has been rewritten, and the reason for that is because secure communication. In fact, everything new developed in the product in Essbase is developed using what's called REST, or representational state transfer. So any action that a user does in the user interface, there is a corresponding REST API endpoint for that. It is the only API that is guaranteed comprehensive through the entire platform for legacy and for new features. So if you really want to think about doing your automation with REST going forward, if you have other ways that you've been doing handling your automation in Essbase, really take the time to learn about REST APIs and examine what you can do with that, because going forward that's going to be Oracle's recommendation and go-to method because of secure communication. Benefits also, you have the ease of deploying Essbase. You have automatic install and configuration. You can use all the benefits that come with having an OCI cloud architecture and then leverage the existing native OCI investments then. It is customer managed. It's a customer managed Essbase. When Essbase was first released to the cloud, a lot of the pushback from that we heard from customers was, I feel like I'm losing control and I need to go file an SR to do something as simple as restarting my Essbase system. And I don't like that. So Oracle heard that, and and that's really the impetus behind the marketplace version, the OCI marketplace version of Essbase, is that it is now customer managed. It gives you the ability to configure your access to your on-prem data sources. It gives you SSH access. You didn't have access to the server before that, which then gives you also ultimate control over patching and upgrading, and also allows you to customize your configuration. So all your backups and your patching is under your control, and there's no limitations on the size of cubes, the number of applications, custom CPU, memory, and storage options can all be configured, and then you can leverage your existing on-prem artifacts, your server-side scripts, your custom JDBC drivers, and do your data loads through rules files, Essbase connections, and then automate your scripting through either REST API endpoints or with CLI and the Maxell client. A lot of people have a tremendous amount of investment in building Maxell libraries, if you will, to handle their automation. So that is still, that Maxell is still there. You'll still be able to leverage all of those years of investment of developing that library, probably by people that are no longer at your company. So don't worry about that. So how do I pick it? Which one should I go to? Well, Essbase on OCI, you're probably looking for greater control over patching and access and configuration, as I mentioned, or you need that SSH access to customize your configuration or do scripting, or you just want to stay consistent with how you're currently doing your on-premises. So you might be thinking about Essbase on OCI for that. Or as I just said, you have significant investment in automation scripting with Maxell or other scripting that you want to leverage. So Essbase on OCI might be for you if that's the case, or you just need greater control over the deployment method. So the OCI Marketplace, it may be even going to a third-party cloud or an on-premises data center as well. So you can now deploy Essbase 21c onto your on-premises data center. Or you're migrating from existing named user licenses and you want the unlimited flexibility on infrastructure and size, deployment type. So that's available in cloud, on-prem, or both. Or you're migrating from CPU-based licensing and you want unlimited users. Of course, subject to your OCPU conversion formulas. So those might be some reasons that you would want to consider Essbase on OCI. And on the other hand, FreeForm Apps, maybe you're looking for hands-off administration. You know, we've been kind of moving away from having such large infrastructure teams, and we're seeing our teams get leaner and leaner, and so we're looking for someone else to do the administration. So FreeForm Apps provides a more end-user oriented deployment, easier maintenance, or you're just trying to consider your entire EPM investment, so your footprint. You don't want to do something completely different. You kind of want to stay within your investment footprint. So taking a more holistic approach, and by going with FreeForm Apps. The prominent use case that I see is that the Essbase cubes are being used as reporting cubes for data from planning to close, the different applications in EPM that you can talk to with Essbase cubes. That's probably the prominent use case, is that I want to keep this all in one place. And then perhaps your data in standalone Essbase cubes is primarily sourced from EPM, or it's targeted into EPM. So this helps minimize data movement. It maintains a consistent metadata and data source. And then also, if you're predominantly having EPM type of users, people that are more comfortable and familiar with planning and reporting, and maybe not so much with raw Essbase, with native Essbase, then that could be a consideration. But maybe you need partitioning because you don't have that in EPM Cloud. So maybe I need partitioning, and I want to push data to autonomous data warehouse through transparent or replicated partitions. Or I'm looking to have my Essbase cubes have a zero footprint, so I want to federate my partitions to ADW. Or perhaps I need shadow cubes, which is there's some very, very interesting things you can do with shadow cubes. We have multiple data sources. Maybe we need multi-cell drill through with the new drill through features that are available in Essbase 21c. Or I'm just needing to integrate with other native OCI services. So that might be a case where I want to put Essbase on OCI so I can communicate with my other services that are already living in OCI. And perhaps EPM to you, again, as I mentioned before, it's just another source of data, because most of your data is from outside of EPM anyway. So if that's the case, and planning data and other EPM data is really just it's a very small part of your overall footprint of data in Essbase, then perhaps Essbase on OCI is the right pick for that. And then the biggest one to me is that if you have dozens and dozens, if not hundreds of cubes, and I've seen some very, very large and worked on some very, very large systems, then that's perhaps not something I want to try to manage in FreeForm Apps, where I'm going to have all that many pods to manage. Maybe I just want to go do that in standalone Essbase, especially if most of my cubes really don't have much to do with EPM in the first place. However, again, on the other hand, FreeForm Apps, maybe I need a lot of interoperability with EPM reporting, and I want that to be done in the same SaaS platform. So that would be a very good use case for going to FreeForm Apps. And then of course the biggie is I want to leverage all of the EPM platform features that I'm used to and I take advantage of today. The accessing through web ad hoc, which is a new feature, or Smart View. I don't have to do everything in Smart View anymore. There's actually a web ad hoc that we can do. Now we'll talk to FreeForm Apps, task list, planning security, a unified Smart View for EPM, your dashboards, your infolets, having auditing, having approvals, and then I want to have easy cross-application connectivity, and then I just need an easier way to automate my data management and data movement. I want to get out of that sometimes seemingly complicated world of automation and move to something that's more consistent with what I'm already doing with my planning systems or with my consolidation systems in EPM. FreeForm Apps is probably a way there, something you should look at. So there are some Essbase features, some of the things you want to be just cognizant of that are different in the EPM cloud. If you're already leaning towards saying, I think I want to look at FreeForm Apps and consider that as my path forward. So there are some things done differently in EPM cloud and in FreeForm Apps. Your calc scripts are now business rules and calc manager. Your CDF or custom defined functions and CDM custom defined macros, those now you would handle using Groovy or Calc Manager design time prompts. Your load rules are going to be handled primarily either through data management or even through EPM integration agent. And then Maxell, all your scripting that you may have done in Maxell to help manage your metadata and data loads, that's now going to be done through EPM Automate, EPM Agent, or through Groovy, through programming with Groovy, which is a very, very powerful tool in EPM Cloud. Partitioning we don't have in FreeForm Apps with EPM Cloud. And partitioning, what we can do is with data management, we can do cross-instance trickle feed of data. So we can do cross-pod data movement, and report scripts are going to be business rules. Text list can be handled by smart lists across all your dimensions. And then your security filters, your Essbase security filters, you would now move to the world of planning-based security, which if you're familiar with that and you're already doing that in your EPM cloud, is probably an easier thing for you to wrap your security around for your Essbase cubes or FreeForm apps. And then if you're doing manual backups and manual patching, don't have to worry about that anymore. Oracle's handling that with automatic backups and automatic patching. There are also some considerations to when you're thinking about EPM import. You can easily build FreeForm apps using LCM or the outline file, the OTL, from your existing Essbase cubes. However, there are some things you want to consider when you do that. Your CDFs, they are possible, but given Java security considerations, cannot be done now. Groovy is going to be your best alternative for that. And again, on the macros just as well. This is a very old feature of Essbase, that custom defined macros. Calc Manager design time prompts on a rule is probably a better implementation of that very same concept. Location alias in Essbase, this is a shortcut name that allowed us to reference a physical Essbase database through its server name, app name, database name, username, and password. In FreeForm apps, we're single queued for now, so we don't need it. And then again, also, as I mentioned, we have the cross-pod smart push to make up for that. With report scripts, this is also a feature that some folks use for exporting data or actually even to do some reporting. There's better alternatives available in the EPM cloud, including ways to export your rules and your dashboards and your forms. The load rules in the EPM cloud, our data movement is through slice, export, and import via OLU, or export and import of level 0 data from Calc Manager. This approach to metadata and data movement into and out of the cloud, it's really a better approach than load rules approach that Essbase uses. So that's some of the considerations that you want to take into play there when you're if you are making that consideration of going. So I think maybe I want to go FreeForm Apps, and so I have this Essbase footprint with all this stuff that we've done over the years. What do I need to consider? These are some of the things to consider here for that. And again, obviously, there's some maintenance difference. FreeForm Apps is SaaS, meaning that it's hosted and serviced by Oracle. You have monthly fixes and patches being applied by Oracle. You get your nightly backups done. You have very frequent enhancements, so you're always feeling like you're abreast of the latest versions of the enhancements and optimizations of the product, so you don't have to worry about that. And then consistent versioning. Whereas Essbase 21c Cloud is IaaS, it's infrastructure as a service. So your decision here may revolve around how maintenance is performed, and then more importantly, who performs it. Because in Essbase 21c Cloud, you do the maintenance, the customer, you do the backups, you do the updates, you do the troubleshooting, etc. The Essbase 21c Independent, the on-prem deployment, it's fully customer maintained, just like you're used to with your existing infrastructure with Essbase on-premise systems. Essbase 21c Independent deployment is really no different. You're still responsible for the operating system, your Java patching, your WebLogic patching, everything, your Essbase patching. It's all under your control, and it's fully customer maintained. So this is probably a big consideration, especially in today's environment where we are seeing changes in number of personnel to provide that kind of support. Here's some of the frequently asked questions I get that when I hear about migrating or upgrading. I'll hear I already have Essbase in the cloud with PBCS. Okay, but upgrading to Enterprise EPM Cloud SKU will provide all the advantages presented by FreeForm Apps. So by going and upgrading to the Enterprise EPM Cloud, that's going to buy you FreeForm Apps, and you'll get all those great the great function and features that I spoke about with that. So you won't have those limitations of having specific dimensionality that's required dimensions, and actually limits on the size of your Essbase cubes. So by upgrading, then you'll get to enjoy all the advantages of FreeForm Apps. The other question I get often is around BIFs. I said, I already have Essbase 12c, I'm happy. Wouldn't I just keep using that? Well, the issue is that your BIFs ultimately becomes what Oracle is calling OAS. It's without Essbase. You can migrate to 21c independent standalone at any time if you have BIFs, if you have the BIFs license, and put that on if you're on Linux. Windows is going to be released. I keep watching. I don't think I've missed it, but there is a Windows version that's being released this fall. So we will have Linux and Windows, or you could just use your Essbase Plus license to migrate to Essbase 21c in the cloud, and just say, well, okay, I was using Essbase with OBIE on my on-premises in my own our infrastructure. Maybe it's time for me to move Essbase to the cloud. So this could be your opportunity to do that, or migrate both your OBIE and Essbase to the cloud, and go to OAC, and then separately deploy your Essbase 21c in the Marketplace OCI. The other question I get is, so I have OAC Essbase, and I'm just happy with that, and everything's working fine. Won't that just be upgraded? No, unfortunately, your OAC Essbase is now essentially end of life. It's frozen at the Essbase 12c version that I mentioned, and so you will actually have to migrate off of 12c at the end of your current OAC contract. So that's something that to consider there. I also say, I get this, I have Essbase in my Fusion financial systems. Will that be upgraded? Not yet. It is on the future roadmap for Fusion Financials. You know, safe harbor applies, but those teams are talking to the Essbase development team, and they're looking for ways to incorporate Essbase 21c in the Fusion Financials. And then finally, I've got Essbase 11124. I just upgraded not that long ago to 11124. Why don't I just keep using that? Well, a big reason might be because Premier support for 1124 ends in just a few months, really. So that could be a big consideration there for you to want to migrate and upgrade, because you're gonna lose your Premier support. So what are my pathways? What's my potential paths to migration and upgrading? And you might fall into one of these categories. Perhaps you're net new to Essbase. You're attending this webinar today because you kind of want to get into the world of Essbase, but then all of a sudden you heard, well, wait a minute, which Essbase do I need to be looking at? Because I'm also considering looking at EPM Cloud. So should I be looking at FreeForm Apps, or should I be looking at Essbase? You're totally net new to this. So there are some things here to know that you can implement 21c Cloud now, or even do an independent deployment if you wanted to do that on on your own infrastructure. So Linux, Windows, when it comes out, 21c is a bring your own license, or what's called universal credits, license included. The BYOL means that you would buy an Essbase Plus license, pay the upfront fee and then annual maintenance, or the UCC is where you would pay by OCPUs per hour, and then plus the other stack components are priced separately. So if you're net new to Essbase, you're looking at that, and then you have an existing Essbase 12c Cloud, aka OCI Essbase. So OCI Essbase is effectively in maintenance mode. Support's going to continue, including patching, for the life of your existing contracts. But then you must migrate to Essbase 21c. That would be your only option to go from OCI Essbase. It's extremely unlikely that you would be able to extend that contract when it runs out. I think even some of the world's largest customers of Essbase have not had that success. So they're really, Oracle really is divorcing OAC and Essbase, and you really do need to consider migrating to Essbase 21c. And so the OAC Essbase SKU, as a matter of fact, it ceased to exist when the 19c SKU of Essbase became available in September 2019. So now 2 years ago now, you literally couldn't buy and implement OCI Essbase after that time. So you'll need an Essbase Plus on-prem license to migrate as bring your own license or UCCs, and see your Oracle rep for advice on that, on the licensing and the dollars. So what about existing on-prem Essbase customers? Well, 11G, again, as I mentioned, is supported through December 2021. So what you would do, what your pathway would be to migrate to Essbase 21c independent deployment. So Linux now, again, Windows coming soon, and then stay on premises. That would require an out-of-place installation or migration. It uses a standalone installer, but you can use the LCM migration utilities to move 11G or 12C to version 21C of Essbase, or move to the cloud now by migrating to Essbase 21C Cloud with your own license. So that's a migration pathway for you there. For our BIFs customers, for our BIFs friends, which is the BI Foundation Suite, OBIE and BIFs became Oracle Analytics Services, or OAS. So your Essbase 12c, which is part of that implementation, then migrates to Essbase 21c independent standalone, or again cloud. You could just go ahead and use this opportunity to jump to the cloud, and this would be the perfect time to do that. And then we have the existing EPM installs. The 11124 Essbase becomes 11.2 Essbase with the release of NPM 11.2, but actually under the covers, EPM continues to use a special version of Essbase 11.124, so it's still 11G technology. It's just a specialized version that very smoothly integrates Essbase with the features of EPM Cloud. But then you could implement Essbase 21c standalone and then integrate that with EPM 11.2, or just migrate to EPM Cloud Enterprise SKU at this time, and then use FreeForm Apps to implement your Essbase cubes in the cloud. EPM Cloud uses a special 12c version of Essbase. Again, it is in talks. It's in planning to incorporate 21c Essbase. The future date that when we'll see that still is not something I've been able to root out of anyone that's willing to even go off the record and say, well, this is what we're thinking. So until to be determined future date, we're going to still be seeing that special 12c version of Essbase that's built into the EPM Cloud for your FreeForm apps. Same with your Fusion Essbase 12c system. It may later become Fusion with 21c Essbase. I would be very, very surprised if it didn't. Again, it's in the works. There's a lot of work to do to marry those together. So Oracle is working on it. And I think it's well past the thinking about it stage, and there's actually work going on to examine that. Some final thoughts I have on migration. Let me just go through this, so make sure I leave a couple minutes for questions here. Your migration of your actual on-premise Essbase applications to 21c, it's relatively straightforward per se. There's export utilities to package up your on-prem applications for importing into the cloud. There's migration tools that are available. The export utilities that are provided to help you in that migration support Essbase versions 11.123 and greater. And then what it does is it exports these to a zip file that's called an LCM export. That LCM export contains everything known about your application, the hierarchical outline, your artifacts, your rules, your security details, all wrapped, zipped up into that file. And then you just take that zip file and import it to the application into Essbase 21c. If you have older Essbase systems, that's just going to require a little bit more work to migrate, like 6.5, 7. I know there's still some people on version 6.5 and version 7, system 9. That's going to take a little bit more work, but it can be done. All your applications and queues must be first converted to Unicode, and then how your current system is automating. So I said it's relatively straightforward and easy, but how you're automating often determines how complex and then therefore how costly converting the automation to Essbase 21c methods will be there. Perl interface is gone. It's replaced with Maxell calls. I've actually done several of these. It's actually almost a one-to-one moving from Perl to Maxell. It wasn't too difficult. Just depends on how extensive the library is. To how long that's going to take. Again, as I've mentioned several times, Maxell language is used extensively by customers. Some of these have built literally for decades, have built these Maxell libraries to automate their nightly maintenance and metadata movement. At 21c Maxell is practically identical in function and syntax to older Essbase versions. This can, and in my opinion, should be heavily leveraged by attempting to essentially preserve that investment in existing custom scripts. Since Maxell is practically identical, that's an easy thing to do. You also have a new command line interface that's used with 21c that can do some things that are advantageous as well. And unless all data sources are located in Oracle Cloud systems, there's really no particular advantage to moving your existing automation scripts to the Essbase 21c Linux Cloud server. They actually work just fine on an on-premise server by making those Maxell calls, and so then that helps you when migrating and thinking about what am I going to do with this Maxell library that I've developed over the last years. Security and provisioning, I will say, should be given great attention when planning and before migrating. Provisioning in Hyperion System 9 11G versions was done with Hyperion Shared Services. This has gone away for Essbase 21c OCI. The independent deployments, there is a limited use shared services that's available, so it hasn't entirely gone away, but if I'm going to go on to independent deployment to on-premises, I can still use HSS. But however, provisioning and security is done in Oracle IDCS for the OCI flavor of Essbase 21c. So I'm in the cloud, I'm using IDCS, so I will have to redo all of my Essbase provisioning and authorization as part of that migration project. So just be aware of that. There'll be many meetings with your IT security folks, I'm sure. Active Directory, other LDAPs can still be used. Integrate with IDCS, including SSO, that works just fine, very well. But do include sufficient time in your migration planning for the many meetings you'll have with your security teams and for testing. Essbase security access can be very granular, and as I mentioned, can sometimes involve thousands of security filters that must be tested, think many hours. Consider replacing that with dynamic filters, which may reduce you to a dozen or so filters. And then do strongly consider using an implementation partner like Perficient that has experience successfully migrating and upgrading Essbase systems. So Courtney, I'm looking, I think that's I'll throw this back over to you, Courtney, see if we had any questions come in.
Perfect. Thank you, Kurt. I think we have time for 1 or 2 questions.
Okay.
Again, if you haven't had a chance to answer or ask a question, you can pop it into the questions tab on the right-hand side. All right, so we'll jump into the first question. Are you using Cube Designer to build new SaaS apps from Excel models?
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
Yeah, of course. Are you using Cube Designer to build new SaaS apps from Excel models?
Yes, you can do that. The Cube Designer or DBX can be used with the latest versions of EPM Cloud.
Perfect.
To do exactly that.
All right, and looks like we can ask one more question. Who is responsible for patching Essbase 21c Marketplace?
Oh, that's a great question. So Essbase 21c on OCI, in other words, deployed with Marketplace, is, as I've mentioned, is an IaaS. It's an infrastructure as a service. So that means that you patch it, the customer patches, or our partners can assume responsibility for your infrastructure maintenance. They all have packages like Perficient. We have a package called SupportNet. So we have an offering which not only takes care of all your patching, your backup, your proactive monitoring needs, but provides responsive support for your end user issues with Essbase 21c or EPM Cloud. But all of that falls onto you, the customer. But like I said, you can employ someone like Sufficient, where we have that SupportNet offering. Just reach out after the webinar if that's something you think would interest you.
Perfect. And I think we can squeeze in one more question here.
Sure.
What about FR and SmartView? Will that work with Essbase 21c?
Yeah, so as I said, Essbase 21c independent as a standalone deployment is supported by EPM 11.2. It just resides on its own server with its own HSS or hyper-shared services. And yes, by the way, it has its own version of EAS to support it. Think of it as a EAS Lite, if you will. FR and SmartView work with Essbase 21c standalone in this setup and are supported as of EPM 11.2.5, which has been out since April-May timeframe. Planning and HPCM, profitability and cost management, by the way, with Essbase 21c will be supported in the next release of EPM. It'll be 11.2.7. That's the plan. At any rate, the current release of EPM is 11.2.6.
All right, thank you, Kurt.
Oh, you're most welcome.
All right, so we'll now close the Q&A portion of today's event as we're close to the top of the hour. If we were unable to get to your question, we will follow up with you shortly after today's event. I encourage you all to follow Perficient's team online as we have new posts added weekly. You can visit perficient.com and click on the Insights tab for our blogs, white papers, and upcoming webinars. As a reminder, there will be an email sent to you with a link to today's event as well as the slides, so you can review the session again or share it with others. Thank you to our speaker, Kurt, and for you all for joining today's call.